Hello, it's Dorn from WhiteFireComics.com. This is a quick video on how to color your art on a computer digitally. Now, there's two ways you could have brought your art in. You could have scanned your art or created your art from scratch digitally. If you scan your art, I will be making a video on that before. In the case of this graphic here, it was originally actually sketched by hand and scanned in. It is not a completed sketch like I'm just using it for fun in this case. You'll see the brick wall is missing and it's kind of dirty in some areas and not cleaned up. Again, it's only for demo purposes. I'm using this graphic and because I like it so much. Okay, so here we go. What we're going to start off with is a quick discussion on the software that I'm using here. This is not Photoshop, but there's equivalents to everything I'm doing in Photoshop. This is actually Corel PHOTO-PAINT X5. I use the Corel Draw graphics suite. It's a much cheaper alternative to the Photoshops and Illustrator type suites, and it's just as good as far as I'm concerned, and I'd rather keep my money in my pocket. Now we'll start off with another section here too, and that would be the objects docker on the right side of the screen. The equivalent to this in Photoshop would be the layers docker, and there's lots of ways. I would research the web if you don't understand what the layers docker does in Photoshop, but in general, it allows you to look down through something. If you picture this background layer or object in this case is something on a table, and then we're going to color on top of it on another layer or object in this case. So what we're going to do is select the new object button in the bottom left-hand corner of the Docker here. And what will instantly happen, you'll see on top of it, we now have another layer. The checkerboard pattern, it refers to it that it's transparent. It's just the reference, the way it's designed. And with this layer, this is where the magic kind of begins. Because you're on this separate layer or this separate object, you do not destroy the lines in your background or that you've sketched in your original image. So what we do is next, you'll see this color palette on the right side of the screen. You just pick a color, and then go over to the left side of the screen where your toolbox will be, and in this case I'm picking the paint tool, which is a paintbrush. And now I'm just going to paint onto the image. You'll notice right now that, hey, that's kind of cool, but you've destroyed all my lines. We'll get to that here in a second. I'm also using a pen tablet, and I use it in conjunction obviously with my mouse a lot. Alright, just get a quick area filled here so then we can discuss what to do next. Alright, so what you'll see is, wow, fantastic, I've got this blue color, but lines destroyed. Back in the Object Manager, you'll notice you have some options here at the top. And one of this is called Merge Mode. Merge Mode, whenever you create that object layer, you're going to probably want to select this right away. You want to select Multiply. And as soon as you select Multiply, looky, it allows your black lines to show through the blue instantly, and it just looks great. Now, inside of PhotoPaint, something's actually bothering me right away here, and that's these marching ants all over the place. I don't think anybody wants this as they're coloring or working with their art. You can turn these off by going to the Object menu and then Marquee Visible. It just makes it a much cleaner way to work. And just to note as well, to scroll in and out here, I'm using the scroll wheel on my mouse in my right hand as I'm left-handed, and I use my tablet pen in my left. Okay, so now we've got this, which is a fantastic color. It's layered on top of here. You can go in here and zoom and change things. With the paintbrush tool, some quick pointers on it. You'll notice when you select it, a bunch of controls show at the top here in the property bar. Inside there is some different types of brushes in that. I would leave it at the default one, which is kind of it's got like a soft edge around the end of it, but you could use a solid one as well if you want to be dead on specific. And as well, there's a size or a nib size option. This is what's controlling the size of my cursor. So you'll see on the screen right now my cursor is a fair size, but when I pump this number up, notice how big it gets. One of the cool little shortcuts they put in is if you hold the Shift key on the keyboard and then drag or move your stylus, holding the Shift key and moving your mouse back and forth will actually change the size on the fly of your actual paintbrush. This is very helpful when you're working with things. Okay, next I wanted to show you quickly that we probably should rename your layers. It's a good practice to do. I'm double clicking on it and I'm just going to call this the color layer, or object in this case, so that you know when you save your file, you open it in the future, which layer you want to be working on. You want to keep, in this case, I would keep all my colors on this layer when I'm working with them. And another kind of cool thing too, next to the merge mode here to the right, is an opacity box. Watch the color on the shoulder here as I start using the opacity. If you don't like the color, if you think it's too dark, you can instantly kind of change the tint of it almost, or lighten it using the opacity option. Alright, that's another item. I guess next we could discuss shading a little bit here. What I typically do is I have a color layer and a shading layer whenever I do stuff. So I'm going to add in another object. I'm going to double click on it. I'm going to call it shading. And what I do with this layer is I always make it black. And the reason I make it black is because you're always going to use the transparency slider on it, and it can be hard to get that color back to work with. So if you always make it black, you can always select later on black easily from a color palette to work with. That'll make sense as you work with it. So now that the shading layer is here, we want to flip its merge mode again to multiply. And I'll show you what's going to happen here. Again, make sure our paintbrush is selected. And I don't like the size, so I'm holding Shift to shrink the size of the brush down. And what I'm going to do is just add some shading. Now again, in this case, you'll see it's too dark. It's just the black is merging with your color sketch lines, and it doesn't look very good. But this is where it's cool that you're using the black, is now you can go back up to the Docker, the Objects Docker, select that opacity, and adjust your shading for your lighting to try and create some depths. I usually use two layers of shading, two shading layers when I'm working, a lighter one and maybe a darker one. It depends on what you're drawing. You'll see the gray is showing out here because there's no blue underneath this area. So if I was to go over here in the white area, see how it shows there. But anyways, so this is a great way to layer up your documents or use the object layers to build some depth in your actual art. So that's really the basics of the coloring of it. It's just like a coloring book at this point. Just stay between the lines. Again, you can use your scroll wheel to zoom in and out, or the zoom tool in the toolbox as you go. Use your shift key to change the size of your brush to get into your details better. And that wraps that section of it up. Now another part of this is color. Color is so important to artists. You'll notice on the right side of the screen I've got this color palette. I don't like this default state that it's in, so you can just click and drag it and you'll see all the colors. There's really not a bunch of color selections here. It's very limiting. It's because this is a bitmap editor. It wasn't originally designed for painting and stuff like that. They've actually got a lot of great color palettes, but they've hidden them on us. So if you go to the Windows menu, you go to Color Palettes, and then down to, I believe it's More Palettes. This will all be collapsed up by default. You'll see this palette library. Click the little arrow next to it to drop it down. Go under RGB, and then you've got a couple different folders. The 256 colors, ignore that one. But you've got this miscellaneous, nature, people, and things. And there's some really good color palettes in here. And to open them up, you just expand that folder, and then you just turn the little eyeball on next to them. And you'll see it opens up here on the side. So let's just open a couple of them here. Like here's some mud and stuff like that. So you'll see the names of them when you hover over. But again, I don't like them in this state. I would recommend pulling them out to work with them and expanding them down if you're going to use them. Another good thing is each one of these colors that you see on screen has a tint in every case. If you click and hold your mouse button down, you'll get another flyout which shows you all the shades of that one color, which is pretty dang cool. And you'll also notice as I'm selecting colors, I should note that whatever color you're using will show over here as a foreground color. So those, as you're doing that one click, that color will get updated over here, and that's the color you're painting with at that particular moment. Another great little item, little gem, is that all these color palettes that they've pre-created and all these colors that are displayed here are fantastic to a degree, but a lot of people are inspired by things in nature, or they might be doing a picture of something from nature and want to get the pictures out of it. And a real quick and easy way to work with a photograph, let's say, of something, is to actually bring it into your image. Just get past my Facebook. Oops. And I'll show you how I would typically work with this. In this case, with this character, I'm going to work with actually some colors that I've seen that are from a peacock, believe it or not. Kind of a funny word to be using, but first let's go to Google. Select the images option and do a search for whatever you're looking for to work on. You could type nature, you could for inspiration or whatever. But a peacock I seen as a young child, and I just thought the colors were amazing, and I want to steal some of these colors to work with. Alright, so you get all these results. So what you want to do is look through them and say, hey, I like this one. This one has got some really vibrant colors in it. When you select that image, it'll open the website where that image is, and 99.9% of the time you should be able to right click on that image and do a copy action. What this does is place the image on the clipboard so it can be used with other applications, etc. And when we go back into PhotoPaint, and I'm just going to activate the objects layer over the color palette manager that popped up that we were working in. So we can look at the objects layer and watch what happens here on the right when I now hit edit and then paste as new object. We now have that image in here for us to work with. And what's cool about this too is that you're saying, well, hey, it's in my way. You don't want this thing in your way when you're working at the end. Nobody wants a peacock in the middle of their drawing. What you do is you can hide layers with this little eyeball in the objects dogger. See where I'm clicking here? So you can work with the colors and then hide it to keep going. Okay, now we've got this image in here. Let's work with some of the colors in it. First thing you need to make sure is that you have the object layer that has whatever image you're working with in it. In this case, I'm going to rename the layer so I know what it is. And now let's get to work on it. So the peacock layer is now selected. Go over into the toolbox on the left-hand side of your screen. You're going to pick the eyedropper. This is used for sampling colors. And as you hover over the image, you'll get great feedback on what color you're over. In this case, I'm going to take one of the blues from the neck area. Alright, you'll notice my color updates on the left in the toolbox. But before I start painting, once I select this paintbrush, you want to make sure you're on the right layer to work with. Because this peacock layer is not seeing, if I start coloring the blue here, well, that's useless to me in the end because I have to hide the peacock layer, right? What you want to do is go back to your color layer, and I guess I shouldn't have left that on. We hide the peacock layer now, and you can just start coloring away. Now, what I typically would do, I wouldn't have colored on the peacock layer at all, and it is a common mistake to have the wrong spot selected when you do here. It takes a while to get used to it, but leaving this peacock layer active, you can keep going back and selecting colors, right? What I'm now doing, see a different shade I got out of it there, is because you work a lot in this scenario between the eyedropper and the brush, the spacebar brings you between your last two tools used. So it's a great time saver once you're doing your sampling to just use your eyedropper. You can use your eyedropper anyways on the screen. It doesn't matter which layer you're on. Whatever you see, it eyedrops that's in your graphic layer. You can't use it on a color palette, but you can use it anywhere. Here to pick up the white, you'll see this updates with white, or even on the peacock layers of the graphic that's active. And my color layer still stays active, so it's not jumping me around between all these layers up here and messing me around. Another quick thing to show you too that's kind of cool about working in a digital world over a standard world with coloring is that you can hide everything. Like I can hide this peacock layer. I can also hide my color layer, right? And there's my shading layer left. and go back to 0 and keep the work I've done. So if I wanted to make multiple color concepts of one character, I can do it all within one graphic. So in this case, you'll see that I've got this can't color icon here. That's because my layers are hidden. You can't work on them when they're hidden. But I can create another layer, and let's say I wanted to make him yellow. I now have to switch things again to multiply over here. You could start painting yellow to see what blindside looks like in this case with yellow, and you can do that and then hide it and then bring back your other color layer. So if you wanted to go back to your blue, you decided the yellow wasn't good, or you wanted to show somebody 3 or 4 different color schemes, this is a way to do it between hiding and showing these color layers. That pretty well wraps everything up. I invite everybody to go check out whitefirecomics.com and to see the other videos in my YouTube channel on creating webcomics. And we'll hopefully be covering a variety of things that people haven't seen before, from the original scanning right through to the digital production, to adding the bubbles and letterings and stuff like that. Thanks again. Later.